I mentioned earlier that 1954 was my best year, but I was working absolutely with peanuts, unfortunately. And I think if you work with small sums of money, I think there is some chance of a few people that really do bring something to the game. But I think it's very, very hard for anybody to identify them. And I think that when they work with large funds, it gets tougher. And it's certainly gotten tougher for us with larger funds. And I would make no promise to anybody that we will do better than the S&P 500. But what I will promise them is that I've got 99% of my money in Berkshire, and most members of my family may not be quite that extreme, but they're close to it. And I do care about what happens to Berkshire over the long period, about as much as anybody could care about it. But caring doesn't guarantee results. It does guarantee attention. But, Greg?
Well, I would agree, Warren, that there's never guarantees, but when I look at the assets we have in place and the teams that are in place, i.e., you're committed to Berkshire, but we have dedicated teams that equally are dedicated to Berkshire, and they're sure going to give it their best effort every day. And when I look at the assets and the people, I think we have, as you said, you can't guarantee it, but we have a great chance of sure giving a good effort to outperform it.
It's hard to imagine getting a terrible result with Berkshire, but anything can happen. And what I do know is it would be easier to be running $5 million than our book net worth at Berkshire at the quarter end, I think, was 370 some billion, which is down, but it's still greater than the book net worth of any corporation in the United States. That's probably, maybe there's some federal corporation that has more, but in terms of it may be the greatest in the world. I'm not sure.
When I would
that makes life difficult in some ways too.
Right, and the potential of our operating businesses are substantial. When you think, we've talked about energy, you touched on it, that infrastructure is continuing to change. We're ready for $100 billion of investment opportunities there. If we just look at the business over the next 10 years and the infrastructure that's required and how it's changing, substantial investments there, that just tell me we have very good prospects. And we're well positioned to pursue them. Which again, to me, when you look at our core businesses, you touched on them: Burlington, the insurance, and energy. It's tough. Our downside is very nicely protected. We have three really core great businesses.
Yeah, and we're better positioned than anybody in the energy business. Just because we don't have dividend requirements, we've retained $28 billion of earnings over 20 years. That you can't do it if you run a normal public company. And we've got a huge appetite, and the country needs it. The world needs it, and we are a very, very logical, well-structured, well-managed, I would say, because it doesn't involve me, company to participate in just huge requirements around the world. Now, they're slow and they involve governments and state governments, and there's a lot of. It's not anything that happens dramatically. It will happen, and Berkshire should participate in a huge way. We can do things in insurance nobody else can do. That doesn't mean much many times, but occasionally it may be important. So there are some advantages to size and strength, but there are disadvantages to size too. If we find some great opportunity that for $1 billion to double our money, that's $1 billion pre-tax, and that's $790 million after tax, and on a market value of $450 billion or whatever it may be, it doesn't amount to much, unfortunately. We'll still try and do it if we can.
Yeah,
I think that if you expect a lot of efficiency, financial efficiency in American higher education, you're howling at the wind. I do a lot more than Warren does in this field, and I'm frequently disappointed. But The monopoly has kind of, and bureaucracy have kind of pernicious effects everywhere, and the universities aren't exempted from it. But of course, they are the glory of civilization. And if people want to give more to it, well, I'm all for it.
Yeah, you've got the option of very good state schools, and we spend a lot of money on education in this country. If you take kindergarten through 12, it's interesting. People talk about entitlements in this country. They say it's terrible. We have all these entitlements for Social Security and everything. We have entitlements for the young. We spend $600 billion a year educating 50 million kids in the public schools between kindergarten and 12th grade. And just think of what that is as an entitlement. Nobody ever seems to bring that up. But it's a huge, and I believe in it, obviously. But, the people in their working ages, generally speaking, I think, in a rich society, have an obligation to both the young and the old. And based on the amount we spend, if we have problems with our school system, it's not because we're cheap. There are other problems that contribute to it. In terms of the money we put out, we're right up there. But I was the trustee of a college that saw the endowment go from $8 million to over $1 billion, and I didn't see the tuition come down, and I didn't see the number of students go up.
Nothing went up, except the professors' salaries.
Yeah, from 8 million to 1 billion. I mean, and very, very decent people running the place. But when you read the figures on endowment of the big schools, and some of them have really gotten up into big numbers, the main objective of the people running the endowment is to have the endowment grow larger. And that will be ever thus. That is the way humans operate. You have any more comments on that, Charlie? You've seen a lot.
I've made all the enemies I can afford at the moment.
Okay. That's never slowed them down in the past.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Christian Campos. I'm from New York City. I'm a senior accounting major at Baruch College, part of the City University of New York. And Mr. Buffett, in your annual shareholder letters and during interviews, and even today, your sense of humor always shines through. Where does your sense of humor come from? Please tell us. Thank you.
That's just the way I see the world. It's a very interesting and in times very humorous place. And actually, I think Charlie has a better sense of humor than I have, so I'll let him answer where he got his.
I think if you see the world accurately, it's bound to be humorous because it's ridiculous.
If you want to not only get a lot more wisdom but appear more erudite, you should read The Wealth of Nations also.
I mean, he is rightly recognized as one of the wisest people that ever came along. And of course, the lessons that he taught way back then were taught again when communism failed so terribly, and people like Singapore and Taiwan and China and so forth came up so fast. The productive power of the capitalist system is simply unbelievable. And he understood that fully and early, and he's done a lot of good.
I took an idea of his on the specialization of labor, and he talked about people making pins or something, but I applied that actually to philanthropy. I mean, the idea that you let other people do what they're best at and stick with what you're best at, I've carried from mowing my lawn to philanthropy. And it's a wonderful thing to just shove off everything and saying somebody else is better than that and than I am at that, and then work in the field that's most productive for you.
Yeah, you didn't do your own bowel surgery either.
No. I'm not sure I have any reply to that.
Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger. My name is Neil Gonady Wall from South Florida, and I'm currently in 7th grade. My question is, how do you make lots of friends and get people to like you and work with you?
That's not a bad question. Very good question.
Well, I was pretty obnoxious when I was your age and asked a lot of impertinent questions. And not everybody liked me. And so the only way I could get the people to like me a little bit was to get very rich and very generous. That will work.
People will see all kinds of virtues in you if they think you'll write a check. Yeah, the truth is, both Charlie and I were on the obnoxious side early on, but you should get a little smarter about human behavior as you get older, and I turned out to have some pretty good teachers as I went along in terms of what worked. I mean, I have looked at other people during my lifetime and had these wonderful teachers. They weren't teachers in the standard definition, but they were people I admired, and I thought to myself, why do I admire these people? And if I want to be admired myself, why shouldn't I take on some of their qualities? So it's not a complicated proposition. If you look around you at the people you like in your school, write down 3 or 4 things they do that make you like them, and then look around at the 3 or 4 people that turn you off, and write down those qualities and decide that you're going to be a person you yourself would like, that you take on the qualities of the person on the left. You're generous, you're friendly, you accept things with good humor, you don't claim credit for things you don't do, all of these things, and they're all possible to do. And if you like that in other people, people are going to like it in you. And if you find things that are kind of obnoxious, you're always late, and you're always claiming credit for more than you do, and you're kind of negative on everything, and you don't like those in other people, get rid of them in yourself, and you'll find out it works pretty well.
And it really works in marriage. If you can change yourself instead of trying to change your spouse, that's a good idea.
Charlie has said the most important thing in selecting a marriage partner is that you don't look for intelligence or humor or character. He says you look for someone with low expectations.